Oh, I just hit stream. Take it down. Intro's playing. All right, there's James and Chris in the Google Hangout with me. What's up, you guys? Yep, nice. Thanks for joining. So we're gonna try this again. If you were tuned in a minute ago, sorry for all the craziness. Hopefully we have it resolved at this point. I think we do.
Yeah, we do. You can hear me. Everyone can hear Chris.
This is accurate.
Cool. Yeah, if you want to check the YouTube and shit for me while I just keep rocking and rolling, that'd be great. But we should be up and live. What's up, everybody? This is Warp Charge Gaming, where we take fun seriously, and this is episode 2 of our live Thursday night talk shows, where we rant and rave about 40k. And tonight we are going to be talking about some pretty big news, which is the new FAQ. There's been a lot of channels discussing their feelings and thoughts.
Was there an FAQ?
Yeah, dude, there's a big drop. You're about to get some learn on. The game has changed.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a new day, a new world, if you will. If James was mentioning that it's like an 8.2, if you will, or like a season 2.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, it's a whole new game in a sense, which I appreciate the shakeup. You know, it's almost like a time. I know personally, I was, while we wait for codexes, Space Wolf players and Orc players and things of that nature. Or even if you've been playing the same stuff, it's nice to kind of reinvigorate the hobby with some new changes to the meta.
Yeah, it's all exciting.
Yeah, man. So I'll pull up my my Google Sheets here, and we'll go over some of the highlights that we got chosen out over the last few nights. I think one of the, we have the main FAQ, like the big ones, where there's some of the rules are considered beta. And that's something to, just be considered in itself. Like, what does, beta rules mean to you as a player, to the community? I personally feel like they should all be adopted, and it's not something you pick and choose. That's always been kind of a thing that, not, of course, tournament organizers and make the game what you want. And if it takes away from the fun, or you're open play player, sure. But match play, these are the rules now, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, and I mostly agree with you. I just think that, like, even Games Workshop comes out and says, we make these beta rules so that you guys can play test them and give us feedback. So, like, on that merit, I kind of understand if certain tournaments want to stay away from using beta rules. But, I mean, so far it seems like every change they've put forward ends up at least mostly being adopted. So I think it's kind of, like, topical. You got to really just dive right into it. I mean, because the game is changing whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think there's only, and that's where it comes down to what are the rules that are points of controversy where people feel like it needs to be edited or changed, and that's where a couple. I think the main one, and before we go into any of the other main rules that have been changed, one of the ones that are coming up in tournaments, or I know in the ITC tournament organizer Facebook thread and everywhere else under the sun, is about the new rules to charging things that are in terrain. There's been some funny memes that are coming out. They're particularly in the main rule book. There's an FAQ that states that if you cannot place your base then within an inch of the enemy model, then you fail the charge. So if you're in terrain, for instance, and you're on the ledge of something, and there's no place for the other model to like firmly sit their base, then in the past it would have been just default to the wobbly model syndrome rule set. But now they've came out and said that no, you cannot make that charge.
I'll be honest, I've always kind of felt like that's what they meant by wobbly model syndrome. And not that I'm some kind of visionary or anything, but I mean, like, like, if you can fit, like, like 1/16 of your base on there, like, you're not up there.
Right. It's more like if you're going to fall off and break or something, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I always, like, read wobbly model as, like, like, if you're mostly on there, like, if you were balanced, physically balanced and up there, you were pretty much up there. But, like, if the majority of you is getting dragged off, like, I've always felt kind of odd about it, like...
Especially when, like, half, like, their base is, like, hanging over and there's, like, a shadow to the stuff below kind of thing.
Well, I mean, like just looking at things like whether it's like an Imperial Knight or like obviously stuff like Mortarian's a bad example because he has fly, but well, I mean he's a good example in some scenarios. I
But yeah,
suppose.
honestly, the fly keyword is where it got to most
Yeah,
the most
that's true.
interesting because you're like, oh, they can't flap their wings and fight, kind of thing. You know, I would say if anything, like okay, like say it's a hill or something that you declare that you can climb the distance of. Then sure, things without fly, it's almost like, okay, I get it. But when you got wings on, it's even almost more counterintuitive. But then when it get another weird point of contention where it has caused some questions to arise is that James and I found last night that the stepping into the new edition FAQ was one of the original FAQs to come out. Hey, kitty. One of the original FAQs that dropped back in 2017, I think it was July even, when they wrote the first one, stepping into a new edition. And in that one, there is practically the same question where if you're charging onto an area that you can't fit with an infantry model, can you make the charge? And they said yes. That's where they just said wobbly model syndrome takes place in that instance. So early in 2017, they already put down that. And that's where I think people kind of ran with the assumption that applies to all things, even though they clearly put in bold that it's only infantry, that you can wobbly model syndrome and make those charges. And now with the new FAQ in 2018, they did not update the stepping into the new edition book. We're left to wonder because it just states that all units, it just says units straight up, and it doesn't make any clarification that excludes infantry. And so we're left to wonder, does the new 2018 FAQ that put into the main rule book supersede what the stepping into the new edition 2017 FAQ had to offer?
Yeah.
Kind of a tricky one. Another thing, just while we're on charging things in terrain, for instance, is that they made, and these are things that can get overlooked if you don't read carefully, because it's not just the one big fatty main FAQ they put out that did dramatically change the game, but they also updated a majority of them, practically every FAQ that they've already written per each, for chapter approved, for the main rule book, for each individual codex. All of those have been updated along with the additional addition to the rules, the big chunky one. And one of the smaller changes that are inside of charging a unit is that you now must measure diagonally. So this for things with fly particularly. So like let's say that you're at the base of a building and you're only 2 inches horizontally speaking to the model that's up inside the building, right? But vertically, that model is, let's say, 12.1 inches, 13 inches away. In the past, you'd say, I can make that charge because I have fly and I ignore the vertical distance of terrain when I move. But they made a clarification that when you declare your charge, just like always, you got to be within 12 inches to declare a charge to something, even if you have the ability to go beyond that distance. But they're saying that vertical distance does matter for even if you have fly. And if there's something that's 12.1 inches above you, even if it's only an inch away horizontally, you cannot make that charge or declare that charge. So that's an interesting dynamic that if you're not paying attention, that could catch you by surprise by your intuition not being kind of retrained onto that mechanic there.
Yeah, it's also going to make Tabletop Simulator unique because you can't measure that.
The diagonal, yeah. Well, yeah, that is really hard. They do have those virtual rulers, and you can kind of lay them that way. So it'll be something we'll have to mess with there.
Yeah, but unique things, man, as far as like the fly keyword and buildings and ruins. Like I was saying earlier before audio got all messed up, as a TO, to eliminate all these like iffy questions that GW needs the FAQ from the FAQ, just have rocks, big line of sight rocks. If you can get on top of it, you get on top of it. If you have the fly keyword, if you don't have the fly keyword, you have to go around it. Otherwise, it's completely impassable. No going through it.
I prefer terrain like that, to be honest. Oh,
me too. It makes it quicker and easier, because when you have buildings, you're always like, I can't fit him in there. Oh, well, he's on the bottom floor, but I'm going to put him on top for ease. Like, all these questions. Oh, are we playing ITC? Can we see through the bottom floor? Can we not see through the bottom floor?
Right.
There's just so many questions when you have ruins, and this just adds to it. Like, can I charge them? If I'm deep striking, for instance, I need to be 9 away from the enemy. Am I 9 away from him horizontally, or am I 9 away from him diagonally? Am I 9 away from him vertically? Like, now, okay, I can declare the charge because I'm within 9, but because I ignore height when I do make the charge, am I only making like a 2-3 inch charge? Yeah. Like, all these weird questions happen when you bring in ruins. And I understand that it's the 41st millennium, all that stuff. The thing is most of these like planets you go to are going to have nothing. They're going to be rocks. All the buildings are destroyed and they're flattened. It's rocks and craters.
I mean, I was saying even when the new 8th edition dropped, like the only thing I didn't particularly enjoy was that they made even more, like it seemed like cover got simplified, but in fact they made like 6 different profiles for like the barricades, or whether it's a crater or forest, or yeah, exactly. I'm like, can we just play hills, please? or just area terrain, just, you know, the terrain's +1 covers, let's keep it moving, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, some big deals there. Of course, you know, beta versus not beta. There was things that were in beta state with the whole new, that they made some slight changes to. Psychic Focus. They when it was in beta rules, it was -1 to the cast every sequential smite you cast after the first. And now they guess they decided that made it too easy to deny, more unfairly so. And so now it's +1 to the cast.
Yeah, the designer notes specifically state that they felt like their original changes in the beta rules, it was like a double negative penalty because not only were you having a harder time to cast, but it was easier for your opponent to deny.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's no longer in beta state, but it is the rules. As we can assume that the current rule sets that are in beta will be as well. It's more so that it's a living document where they're accepting feedback and requests to be able to cater it and bend it and mold it to be the most the best rules that they can put in place possible. Is what we hope, right?
That's super interesting because like they make it so that it's this living document so that can be changed, like the smite rule was. But the thing is they change the main rules as it is. So they can change whatever they want to change, and we're always going to play whatever is the newest rule because we want it to be uniform. So you're not going to different tournaments having to play different rules, things like that. I mean, we're all going to play beta. Let's just face it. We're all going to play beta. Every place you go to is going to play beta. And if they're not playing beta and everywhere else is, that place is going to have a very low turnout. I mean, that's just how it is. So everyone's going to play beta. And it doesn't matter what they do. If they're probably just saying, hey, this is what you can look like in the future, but we might change it. Like this power level reserve, tactical reserve thing, having half on, half off, that's great. But when you put power level into effect, all these armies are different. So, like, how do you know what someone's power level is? It might look like they have more on the field and stuff off the field, but their stuff off the field might be like 14 power level a unit.
Well,
so it ends up being way more.
They were saying that on the long war too. It's just like now it's just something that we're gonna have to get more trained on. When you reach the table in a tournament environment, it's something that is going to be expected that you have well able to present very easily and quickly. That here's the power level in reserve. Here's the power level on the table. You know, and granted, you know, people can always. There's always ways to lie and cheat and whatever, but you know, when someone says, "Hey, what is the power level you have on the field versus on the out of the field?" They should be able to already have that answer prepared if there's any even close to being a very close difference, you know.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it is something that is something else to be more familiar with and to have to know in the pregame.
But that's one thing I feel that may be changed. Because they were definitely thinking of Tyranids when they came up with that rule. Like,
oh, definitely. I mean, that spore mine, man. I mean, that's the mucilid spores are, you know, for 20 points a model. Like to have half your units on the field was just painfully easy. It wasn't even like, I mean, rippers. You know, for a unit you could get 3 on the field for 33 points. But I mean, you know, for 60 points you can get 3 units. I mean, that's 3 hive tyrants.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy is like I completely understand their thought process in adding that, but it hurts so many other armies that are thematically should be coming in from reserve. Granted, if it's turn 2, It could be turn 3 even. I mean, a lot of tactical players do not put all their reserves turn 1 because they're putting all their eggs in one basket. Most tactical players think about the finesse of the game, the missions, and responsive to their opponent. So you might, like for me, if I brought 3 units of obliterators, I was bringing them 1 turn 1, 1 turn 2, 1 turn 3, and maximizing like my positioning. And I feel that there's so many armies that can definitely utilize that, like Blood Angels with all jump packs being able to come in. Old school drop pod armies. I mean, as soon as you start adding power level to the transport itself, and then power level to the units inside, and then their supporting characters, it just gets jacked so high that it's like, well, this army doesn't operate how it should anymore. So I feel that's one thing they probably will change after all of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that like gonna be that skewed or problematic, but I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm changing batteries. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we definitely have no idea. I'm just making assumptions based off of like what armies have been built in previous editions that no longer exist because of the power level thing. And then also earlier in chat we had Ice Wolf asking about measuring from the base or not. And yeah, you always measure from the base unless it's a vehicle that like says it in the data sheet to measure from the hull.
Right.
Like a Lord of Skulls, for instance, it has no base. It's a Lord of Skulls, so it's you measure from the hull. So what's interesting, it can ride right up to a building and charge something on the 3rd floor with its head.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, you measure diagonally, and usually from the base, but in some instances, like that one, you would measure from the model. Definitely important to note. So if you haven't got a chance to check out a lot about the FAQs, one of the ones we were just discussing is the new tactical reserves rules, where not only does half of the units in your army must be on the board to match what's in the reserves, but also half of the power level. There was a lot of people that were, I think besides just Tyranids, another instance of that happening was people were putting a ton of characters inside of a transport, where they would put 5, 6, 7, however many characters inside of a transport to equal their unit count. But then they would be able to just put in, that many. They would only have 1 tank on the board hidden away in the back, and they put the rest in the reserves. So it's another way to make sure that the appropriate amount of power is on the table. But then on top of that, they also made it so for deep strikers, deep striking isn't really even an 8th edition term. It's just still brought over from 7th. But now anything that arrives mid-game or after the game has begun, if it arrives on the first turn, it is forced to arrive wholly within your own deployment zone. So, no longer can you do Denizens of the Warp on a pack of bloodletter, 30-man blob of bloodletters and bomb it in somebody's face on the first turn. It has to go into your own deployment zone. On turn 2, you can. Turn 3, you can. But turn 1, no. So they've tried to cut back on the Alpha Strike. And there's still things that arrive before the game begins, like the Alpha Legion or Nurglings, things that kind of do it in the deployment step. There's still ways to get outside of your deployment zone, but deep strikers specifically cannot. So that's pretty wild.
Yeah, and then that brings into the question the psychic powers and stratagems that allow you to leave the field and come back on the field the same turn you left it. And if you leave the field and come back on the field in another FAQ, you come in from reserves. And
right, count as
can't do that turn 1.
And they also,
and it's kind of crazy. I'm sorry, George.
Oh, I was saying they also added to that. You just made me think about how on top of that they made a point to say that if you have any rules, it says very specifically that when you do deep strike in, that you cannot move any further for the rest of the turn. You can't advance, can't move. And, honestly, without the FAQ, that says in black and white that, okay, I can't move for any reason once you deep strike in. But they went further to make that a point when they did do the FAQ to say things like warp time, soul burst, swarm lord ability, things that allow you to gain an extra move in a turn are not allowed to be used on things that arrive from reserves.
Yeah, but you still can charge. You can still assault. So
yes.
That's your only way of achieving movement after deep striking.
Yeah, but they didn't say that no abilities or powers or stratagems can be used to do such a thing. So that's another power, because that was the Shining Spear trick that won the LVO. Nick Nanavati ran there was a popular Eldar list where you would drop in, you would deep strike in Shining Spear close combat Eldar bikes, and then you would quicken them from far back, because the Eldar had another like ability stratagem or whatever to be able to cast powers that double the range. And so they could be like 36 inches back and cast Quicken on a unit that deep strikes in to give them a free movement that would then turn one charge in the face and wreck something. And all of them had fly, of course, too. So that's gone. So there's been several things that have been taken away from that first turn. You're getting wrecked. And I think it'll be interesting to see the ebb and flow of the amount of screening people take going forward. I still think it'll be there, but like maybe there's going to be some initial like, I don't need as much, and they're like, then turn 2 they're getting whacked in the face.
Yeah, no, people are definitely going to be caught slipping for the first couple weeks to months with thinking they can take less screens. But I also think that you might see more screens after that initial like, oh, I wasn't thinking about other armies that can still assault turn 1, because there's plenty of them that can. I see more screens happening because of battalions. I mean, getting 5 command points now with a battalion, you're going to see a lot more troops, just because people need 3 troops to fill out a battalion. I mean, true. I'd rather take a triple battalion over a brigade army, and that's, what, 9 troop slots?
Yep.
And there's your screens right there.
Yeah,
Go
ahead, Chris.
The only thing I kind of lament about that change is it's a thematic thing, because like armies like Guard or Tyranids or Orcs, I kind of wish they could still field like more than 3 of a given unit. Just because, at least for troops, you know what I mean? Because as far as I know,
for troops,
that's still an yeah. Troops are not part of that.
Correct.
Troops and transports are not part of that at all.
Oh.
Which was whack, because it still lets the Razorback spam still exist. You can still do a bunch of Razorbacks with Gilliman.
Yeah, having those las cannons.
Yeah, because that has always been good. And that still exists. But they did make Gilliman, they did raise Gilliman's points to 400, which I believe was around a 40 to 50 point increase. I can't remember his old one, but I feel like it was pretty, hopefully substantial enough to lighten the load a little bit, or at least balance it out a little. Because I've always thought he's one of the biggest pricks in the galaxy with his rule set there.
His special rules are insane on how they can stack.
Yeah,
I mean, even without soup, I mean, just being Ultramarines by yourself, or not even being Ultramarines. I mean, let's say you're White Scars. I mean, you still get so many bonuses from them.
Yeah, three command points are off the gates. He's a beast in combat and shooting, and then he comes back when he dies. The fact he can't kill him is extremely annoying. But I was glad to see, he deserved it a little bit, so I was glad to see it. What else did they do? So we got tactical reserves, we got psychic focus, we're talking about the new ways that charge is implied, into terrain as being a thing, diagonal distance, and then we were just mentioning the rule of 3. That's a pretty cool, that is, that they're trying to take care of spam. I think it affects a lot of armies in different ways. They did a couple things here that I think is I think these are both pretty damn game changing, with the whole 5 command points for battalions and 12 command points for a brigade now. Motivating a lot more. One, there's going to be a lot more stratagems in play.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to go back to Gilliman. He was 385.
Oh, it was only 15 points?
It was only 15 points.
It wasn't a big change, because he'd already been raised in points in chapter approved.
Yeah, quite a few times. Fair enough. Well, I hate him still. So yeah, we got more command points. We're gonna start seeing more battalions, seeing more troops potentially for the reward that comes with it. And then the rule of 3 is that you can only bring 3 of any one data sheet, which has led to some questions, Demon
Princes.
Yeah, Demon Princes are a great example. I mean, I think Lehman Russes have came up a few times as well, because they have a few different sheets, right?
Well, you can take, yeah, I guess technically you're right, because there's like the Lemon Rust Vanquishers versus Demolishers versus...
Right. It's like, if you have different weapon choices, like, that's not a different data sheet. It's like got to be a different, like, straight up little profile. But then they have like Like I'm trying to think of, you know, where they'll have like, let's say a chapter master, and then there's chapter master on a bike, right? Or like a chaos lord on a bike. Does that mean I can bring 3 chaos lords on a bike and 3 chaos lords on a bike?
The chaos lords and sorcerers get crazy because you have the mono god like steeds, like Disc, Fiend, right. Juggernaut, exactly. Palanquin. Then you got the bike, and then you got jump pack. Then you have on foot. Then you have Terminator armor.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy you want to get?
Yeah, I would assume. I feel like you can take 3 of all those, just like with the Tyranids. Like you got the walking tyrants and the flying tyrants.
No.
That's one data sheet. Yeah, that's just an upgrade point. That's just upgrades. Okay.
That actually is one thing that just to like very much gloss over, because obviously it's not of much interest to non-Tyranid players. It's kind of weird because they, for the points upgrade, said Winged Hive Tyrant 190, but it's not really clear if that's a base cost change, because before the wings used to cost just 25 points added on to the Hive Tyrant, which, you know, you could get as cheap as like 155 plus 25. You know, you could run a Hive Tyrant for, you know, like 170 points, pretty bare bones with like the crappiest weapons. But you know, like, when you just say, hey, Winged Hive Tyrant 190, it's like, okay, well, like, does that include weapons? Does it include the wings? Like, obviously it's Winged Hive Tyrant, but, like, the way they worded it, because wings have always just been an upgrade, it's just a little ambiguous, unfortunately, which is something I hadn't considered until I was talking to James earlier today. Because he was saying some Tyranid players were arguing like, oh, well, like, Winged Hive Tyrant is not the same thing as Walking Tyrant. I'm like, it's one data sheet, though. Like, gotcha. I mean, don't get me wrong, shit in one hand, wish in the other, but...
Yeah, gotcha. So what we're talking a little bit about Battle Brothers intermixed in there, because you can have 3 of one data sheet in an army. Okay, that's one thing. But then now also... your detachments, they try to deal with the soup concept of a lot of intermixed kind of factions, if you would, into one single detachment. For instance, I used to take a Renegade and Heretic brigade, where I would take the Tzeentch demons as the troops and elites with Exalted Flamers, but I would fill all the other slots out with the Renegades and Heretics. They were extremely cheap, fast attack, heavy, and elite slots. But no, that is not a thing now. Like, if you cannot use just the word chaos or just the word Imperium, or Eldari, or Tyranids as a faction keyword to build your detachment around. You have to have something other than that. So, like, for instance, we're mentioning with chaos, you know, sure, I can't have demons and Chaos Space Marines together on the rule chaos keyword alone, but you can do it by their gods. Like, so if you want to take Slaanesh Chaos Space Marines or Heretic Astartes to be in tune, and Slaanesh demons, you can in the same detachment and still be battle forged and allowed, being that they share the god keyword versus, say, the chaos one.
Yeah.
Tyranids is interesting to me because they've always just been a single faction of Tyranids, and now that they brought in these different like hives, it's like, nope, you're not allowed to bring just Tyranids. You must pick a hive.
Yep. Well, and that's actually, even when they were Index, like, they both had the Tyranid keyword and the Hive Fleet keyword. It's just that it was always Hive Fleet blank until we got a Codex. Because Genestealer Cult also have the Tyranid keyword. And so, like, I used to be able to run, for example, like, Scout Sentinels from Genestealer Cult to fill in fast attack if I wanted. But that's no longer a thing, because I have to share a keyword that isn't Tyranids.
That's interesting. I didn't even know it had that kind of effect, because obviously I don't play Nids or Genestealers, yeah. But it's interesting as hell.
Yeah, the wild bugs.
And I mean, Genestealer Cult are like the clear winner on this whole Alpha Strike thing.
Ooh, good point. Yeah, they were one of the only, them, and wasn't there one other faction that got the go ahead?
No, they are the only ones that got the go ahead.
Yeah,
which is nice. It was cool because like they did just a few individual tweaks, and that's what, like, there was a lot of expectations to what was going to go down with the FAQ. And like the Tau precedents with the Tau Codex, where they limited 3 commanders, 1 for each detachment, so 3 in an army. that was what we thought the precedence was, which it was in a sense. Except just like targeting certain HQs in each faction, they literally just blanketed everyone with the rule of 3. And then, as far as so that is only a few different factions got particular changes in this new drop. Genestealers being one of them, becoming better by a overall rule set that applies to everyone now made them slightly better. Just like Thousand Suns that I'm about to take advantage of got better because they unlocked. They let them do smite now without any modifiers.
Gross.
Yeah, I mean, I remember even today I had more than one person be like, I don't think you can do that, George. And I kept going back to the rules, be like, I think you can.
You mean me?
Well, yeah, Patrick did too. Yeah, you and somebody else, Patrick. And he's like, well, son of a gun, I think you're right, man. Because basically the Brotherhood of Sorcerers is the allowance that was given, that if you're Thousand Suns with the Brotherhood of Sorcerer rules, then you can, which I almost don't know why they even wrote that, because every Thousand Suns Psyker has the Brotherhood of Sorcerer rule. That's what they gain for being a pure Thousand Suns detachment, which gives them +6 inches to their psychic powers, and now in addition, unmodified smite, meaning there is no negative to casting it over and over and over again. So I sure as hell am looking forward to bringing out my Tzeentch and taking advantage of that. I'm definitely in the start of 8th edition, smite spam was my go-to.
I'm just verifying, you can't take Malefic Lords under that keyword, correct?
Correct, yeah. Malefic Lords would be Renegades and Heretics, and they can't share chaos. Yeah, they'd have to be, and besides, they're not even worth it anymore, but...
I mean, hey.
Yeah.
Just for, like, racking up sheer volume of smite, I mean, I don't know. But simultaneously,
there's a Zangor sorcerer that I wish I could take, and then there's also, like, remember I used to do the Slaanesh Heralds, because those are actually the most affordable psycho that you can catch from the demons, right? So yeah, I considered like going back into like a summoning type portion of this concept and just trying to summon a crap load of smite. And that's another weird thing, right? Is like you can get around the rule of 3 with summoning.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because it just says you can only bring in your army. Doesn't mean I can't like add one. Like for instance, here's a weird one. Like I have the boon of, it's not the boon of change, but the boon of mutation, right? You do it on a non-demon character, like a Heretic Astartes character, psychic power, boon of mutation. And if you roll double 6s, they gain demonhood, and for no reinforcement points, they die and turn into a demon prince. Right? So if I got 3 demon princes, I can have a 4th if that happens.
So many demon princes.
If I summon, I can have another. I think you totally can get around it with summoning, because it reads that it's about starting your army.
That's actually kind of something, and I mean, this is just a weird aside. I mean, maybe not a weird aside, but like, you know, with Flying Hive Tyrant having been as successful as it was, as briefly as it was, I feel like point for point, Demon Princes are very similar. So I was always kind of shocked that that build wasn't more of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like they don't have the same kind of gun output, but you know, that's the main thing. They certainly can be big and buff, and they can be super powerful, like punchy and psychic and fast, but they can't shoot out 12 to 24 shots, you know?
I'm stepping off cam for a half second, but yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I really like Thousand Sun Demon Princes. Like, in my opinion, they are the best Demon Prince of all the Demon Princes, because they all have their unique flavor. Like, Chaos Space Marines can bring Warp Bolters. They now put in the FAQ that Death Guard Nurgle Demon Princes can take a Plague Spewer. So that's super cool, because that's a heavy flamer on a Demon Prince. And then Demon Princes each get their, like, unique God rule, which is really cool. But that's where, like, the Tzeentch one, or Thousand Suns, double dip. Like, they get a 4-up invul still, and they get 2 powers.
Yeah, let me show the, I got my list already ready to show on camera. I'll fire it off.
Actually, while you're doing that, just because I don't feel like we actually explicitly hammered it out for the viewers, but the difference with reserves and Alpha Strike that has happened is unless you are Genestealer Cult, your reserves can only arrive in your own deployment zone on turn 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, basically nobody's going to be able to get outside of their deployment zone on turn 1 unless they arrive before the game. If it's once the game's begun, any sort of teleportation strike or deep strike, however you want to call it, they're going to end up in the deployment zone.
That's actually also one thing I think is a little ambiguous, is in that ruling, it makes it seem like that only applies to like pre-game reserves and whatnot, because there's a division in the paragraphs, but it's kind of unclear. Like, because, I mean, reading the second paragraph of the new beta rule for the reserves, it could also extend to other rules that are redeploy if you were to read it a specific way, but I'm pretty sure that it only applies to pre-game reserves.
Yeah, no, you're correct, Chris, but the thing is, there's another FAQ that already says when you leave the field and you come back, you're coming in from reserve.
Okay.
But what I think is going to be interesting with this whole, because Alpha Legion is still Alpha Legion, Raven Guard is still Raven Guard. These armies that do that haven't changed. Yeah. How other people play changes, but the way those armies play haven't changed. So, like, taking advantage of it more isn't necessarily going to help a whole lot. It's just what you're going to allow yourself to do is position yourself better for turn 2 because you have that extra move that they didn't get. But what I see a lot happening, especially for Chaos, is more Helldrakes. Because of this, the Helldrake can move 36 inches and gets the charge 2d6. Like, you're going to see a Helldrake put itself in a position to make it so that you cannot push forward on those armies, and that their turn 2 deep strike is going to be in great position.
It's a fair call. Fair call. That might give some resurgence to that. Yeah, so we're on the topic of how these, there's universal FAQs that kind of change armies individually in its own right. For instance, we were talking about the Gene Stealer Colts being an exception with the new deep striking, and then the Thousand Sons, they get to now do unmodified smite like everyone else. They have to do +1 after every cast after the first. The Tzeentch do not. Here's the list I'm most excited to play right now, and that's taking full advantage of it with, like, I think I have 13 characters in there. 10 of them can do smite. To zoom in a little bit on those characters, it's 3 Exalted Flamers, 3 Demon Princes of Tzeentch. Now they're Thousand Sons Demon Princes to be exact, so they have 2 powers. One of them has the Warlord trait to have a 3-up invuln. I took the, which is, yeah, and then there's a relic to, I think it's the Warlord traits to 3+, and then there's 2 relics that are really good. Can't remember which one I took, but basically I can smite my ass off. I think I can put out 18 mortal wound powers a turn, and on average, if I were to get just 2 mortal wounds per smite, that's 20 alone. I should be able to get around average about 30 mortal wounds a turn in the psychic phase with these guys. So that's exciting.
So George, I have a question. How are you going to, like, sleep with yourself at night?
The same way I did back when I played Malefic Lords, dude. I'm gonna wrap up in the warmth of everyone's sorrow. Yeah, dude, I've taken my licks a lot. I feel like I've lost a lot, and I'm ready to do some winning.
I actually realized in our game the other night, I played that I had 11 command points, but I had 14 because I forgot to add the 3 base.
How gracious of you. I needed every bit of it. Did nothing. Corn did not, at least on its first try, it did not get any better.
I'm so sad about Corn. In my opinion, they are the weakest of all the gods. And that should not be so.
Hopefully that'll turn back around.
Oh, and I will be so happy that day.
Speaking of army-specific changes that dropped to the FAQ, we have Tide of Traders. That's a big change to the cultists. The Tide of Traders is when you were able to, like, even if you, let's say you take 40 cultists, because I think that's max squad is 40, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then somebody kills 39 of them, and there's 1 left. And they say they got Abaddon, now he's fearless, you have to take a dang morale check. If he's not fearless, you spend 2 command points, he doesn't die, and then you can do Tided Trader Stratagem, pick that 1 model up, and then put back on the board the entire unit at full strength, and not pay the points to get those dead models back. It was extremely powerful, and especially doing it multiple times in a game. which happened when you take Abaddon. Now you're fearless, and that's two command points you're not spending each turn just to keep them alive to do the Tide of Traitors. And people would do it over and over, having multiple cultists unit. You kill through one, there's another, and now you can only do it once per game. So that's a big change and something that's going to change the meta a bit. We saw Nick Nanavati, one of the multi-winners of Adepticon. He had the Tide of Traitors ready to go in his main list, going to number 2 in the tourney.
Now, as someone who plays cultists and Tide of Traitors all the time, I'm not even upset about this in the slightest. Like, I never really played with Abaddon. Like, I recently, knowing that this FAQ was coming, I kind of got it in while I could. And got second at a local RTT with 3 of the top 10 in ITC that participate locally. And yeah, with the Poxwalkers, it was broken because you bring Abaddon, the cultists are fearless, they all turn into Poxwalkers, the dead will walk again, and then you Tide of Traitors them, and you just keep doing this over and over again. It's stupid. But the way I played with my Adepticon list, I bring them as Alpha Legion without Abaddon. I am truly lucky to get it off once in a game. Twice, dude, I know I won that game if it happened twice.
Yeah.
But once, I mean, if you're playing against a good player, they're going to kill that big unit. And when you have something with the Marcus Lanesh, you rather use those 2 command points to shoot twice than to bring 15 or 20 cultists back. Or if you're playing ITC, maybe 19 cultists back. Because if you want diversity, you're not going to take 3 giant 40-man blobs of cultists if you're Alpha Legion without Abaddon. It's just, you don't have enough command points at that point.
Right. Now, didn't they hit the Poxwalkers as well?
Well, that's the thing, is like, that's where I don't feel bad about it. For Alpha Legion, I can continue doing my Tide of Traitors. My list doesn't really change at all because I'm only doing it once a game anyways. But like I said, with Abaddon, you are fearless, and that's where the Poxwalkers come in. Because the Poxwalkers, when they died, anything 7 inches, friend or foe that was infantry, became a Poxwalker. Well, with the FAQ, if anything dies, it becomes a Poxwalker. If you're going over your initial starting size for that unit, you now must pay reinforcement points. So you can go ridiculous and add 80 models to 1 unit and have this giant blob moving forward, but you're paying for it.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows now that you have to pay for that, this is going to put shots into it. Make sure it never comes because it's real slow. And if they put enough shots into it, you're going to run out of enough points where that unit is no longer scary.
Yep. And I mean, the fact that an endless tide, it was extremely unfun for the person on the other side shooting endlessly. Now, Nurgle has that effect, the Walking Dead style. I mean, you're shooting into zombies. Of course, there should be kind of never ending to a degree, but they took it from broken to fair.
Yeah, because with the Tide of Traitors being able to do that multiple times and that not paying points, it was like you're getting free points for cultists, you're getting free points for Poxwalkers. It was truly an addition that was supposed to have no free points, and you were getting like over 500 points back in models. And it was kind of crazy, super broken. I felt bad if I ever brought it to a tournament, except for the last tournament I brought, because I knew it was the last time it could ever be played. Right. And now with Tide of Traitors being only once a game, them paying for points, those lists you'll never see again. So like Nick Nanavati's list for LVO changed dramatically because of the Deep Strike rule and the rule of 3, and then the points increases for Dark Reapers, and now his Adepticon list got completely destroyed because of the Poxwalkers and Tide of Traitors.
So did the person that won too, Matt Roots. I mean, he had what, five Flyrants in there, multiple Molochs,
even 5 to 7.
Right, and we saw that in which, by the way, if you check out our channel, you can see that final matchup between Nick and Matt in the championship missions of the Adepticon tournament. But he also, those two, that match right there is a perfect testament to what is not allowed anymore. Like the Tyranids on turn 1 were right in his face.
Oh yeah,
not a thing.
I mean, to be fair though, I mean, and this is less of a thing, but like the cultists were right in the Tyranid lines pretty early as well, like right off the bat. Like, I mean, both armies were taking huge advantage of exactly what has been curbed in these FAQs is, like the alpha strike in your face, like, and spam. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, I think. And I'm not really upset to see spam curtailed, but, I mean, only time will tell how this affects the meta in the long run, because, I mean, we saw back at Nova last time before codexes were really rampant. I mean, conscripts were everywhere.
Yeah.
Conscripts, and I mean, you won't see as much of the soup, granted, because of these FAQs. That was a big change, but I mean, like, the horde units that were good were taken.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another, just reminded me of there's a couple more instances of individual things being kind of changed. Well, one, you can no longer do, and this kind of goes with Nurgle as well, you can no longer do double, any ability that would let you save a wound after it's been taken, like a feel no pain.
Oh yeah, no more double feel no pain.
No more double. So no more like taking the 6-up warlord trait every time you lose a wound and combining that with your disgustingly resilient.
Yeah,
cool.
But back to Adepticon and those crazy lists, I have to give a mad shout out to Juice. Like, that man, his list is legal today, and he got top 16. Like, that's saying something.
Yeah.
What was he running? Was he running his Tyranids or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had that Malanthrope list. That was interesting. I saw him. I mean, I watched some of the bat reps here were gearing up towards it, and I mean, like, it was an effective list. I mean, it was a list that played strictly towards the objectives and the missions. It wasn't the killy, like, monstrosity that a lot of players want to play, but I mean, it was resilient. It had a lot of bodies. I mean, even his Warlord, the Malanthrope, it was all about denial for Warlord. It was a list that when I saw him field in the battle reports, it had me scratching my head a little bit because, I mean, freaking, I guess, I just, looking at some of the forceful, like, backhanding lists that are out there, a lot of players think to themselves, like, oh, I have to have, the Dark Reapers or the 7 Hive Tyrants or whatever is just going to smack the crap out of my opponent. But, like, I mean, sometimes that is what it is. It's kind of like, the Poxwalker, like, thing. But, like, the thing that will play objectives the best, and even if it's, like, almost getting wiped every game, as long as it's actually scoring these points during the game, it could end up a winner.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that's how most armies are going to become, is you need to be creative. You need to play to these missions. You got to know ahead of time what a mission is. That's what's great about ITC. It's pretty standard. A lot of tournaments you're going to go to, you're going to play those type of missions. If they're not playing those missions, you at least got a week to 2 weeks out, and you just got to be creative.
Yeah, speaking of missions and playing to them, I just threw up on the screen, we have our first Warp Charge Gaming live, like, public event going down this year, June 24th on a Sunday at a sweet venue called Gallery 5. I'm really pumped to get to play Warhammer in this spot. It definitely is like a like post-apocalyptic type feel. It's a bar. It's going to be sweet, but we still got yet to kind of design our missions. I was thinking about how got to start building a list around Nova coming up, another big, a giant, huge East Coast event that I hope to one day match their level of prestige. But yeah, need to make some lists to go to the missions, because that is a key to success.
Absolutely, and I think, like, that's something we need to hammer out, but I'm definitely for giving any kind of bonus points to non-Chaos and non-Imperium armies, just because, favoritism.
Shut your mouth.
Also, playing to the mission. I did not play to the mission in this video. You can watch me go to a recent tournament in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's called by Field of Fire Gaming. They had their spring tournament at Event Horizon Games. I brought my towel list. It technically is an illegal list now because I had 4 Riptides, but who's counting? I also would have had a ton more command points.
I was counting, George. I was counting.
George is a cheater.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Oh, man. Love cheating.
Cheating.
Man, I think we covered most of the main things. They, let's see, you can only embark in the movement phase. Oh, that wasn't it. They did clarify that you can only get into a transport in the movement phase, no falling back. into the, or like, you know, Tau have things where you can like, or like even battle focus, like move after you shoot kind of concepts. You can only embark on a transport in the movement phase. That is a new thing. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Yeah, I don't think we've left off much. I mean, we got the psychic focus, we got character targeting. We know that, you know, a character can't block a character that's under 10 wounds on its characteristic. We got tactical reserves. You got to have half your power level and units on the board. And then you get, you have to be on turn 1. If you arrive after the games began, on turn 1 you have to be wholly within your own deployment zone, except for Genestealer Cult, which is awesome.
Yay!
Now they're back in the fold with some special abilities. I love, you know, I want armies to be unique. I like the idea that every army has a unique play style to it, you know, a flavor. So I think that's cool. The Genestealer gets their due there. And then on top of that,
they don't even have a codex yet, which is kind of an interesting point, because depending on the effectiveness of the codex, I mean, they may have to change that ruling if it's like OP.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, the codex is already written, right?
Possibly.
Right. The so yeah, there's the also on top of that, smite is now not -1 after every cast, is +1, and the only ones not affected by that is Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, which is exciting, and I plan to be abusing soon on the channel, so keep your eyes peeled and watch me smite away.
He says using, but he means abusing.
Abusing, yes, I'm using, abusing, it's fine. Who said spam is dead? It's back.
It's back, and it's stronger than ever, and it's all psychic all the time.
Oh, and James, I'm going to want a little dance from you on this one, man, because there's some rule that I was quite passionate about, and it was about the Berserkers and their chainsword rule.
Yeah.
Some people strongly believed that the damn... in order to get +1 attack from a chainsword, you had to actually fight with the chainsword at one point in time. So, like, let's say I have 3 attacks, okay? That I would have to dedicate one of those 3 attacks to the chainsword in order to get the bonus attack for the 4th one. That is absolutely incorrect. I argued it till I was blue in the face, and I was going to have it no differently. And I was glad to be justified, validated with the FAQ, basically saying what we already knew.
Yes, I mean, I've always played this way, but I have been at top table tournaments, and my opponent tells me, oh no, this is how it should be. You get that many attacks, but one of them cannot be an axe. It has to be a sword. And then they pull out the rule book, and they show me where in the rule book it says that you have to, like, you can pick what weapon and it has to be swung with that weapon. And it just didn't seem right. The data sheet says one way. The rule book was just talking about your generalization of how you attack, and not necessarily how you're getting your free attack.
Right.
So in that mission, I definitely was like, okay, this is how it is. It's fine. But yeah, in my heart, I knew I was gonna get that extra +1 strength and +1 -1 AP.
Yep, I'm happy to see. I'm happy to see that in print. We also have the, you know, along with the can't, you know, be outside of your deployment zone on turn 1 if you're arriving after the game's begun. You can know they definitely made well and clear now that no longer ability, stratagems, or psychic powers can move something that arrives via deep strike in any further way beyond a charge. The only way you can move from your distance that you arrived from is with a charge. No more quickening, no more swarm lord, no more warp time arriving from reserves.
See, I feel like that's difficult for me as a Tyranid player. And
shut your mouth.
I know this is whinging, but like the Swarm Lord is 300 points, where a Hive Tyrant costs half his cost for a Walking Tyrant. Like you're paying double the points on a Tyrant for just that ability.
Still better than a Gargantuan Squiggoth.
Hey.
Oh, definitely.
I don't wanna,
yeah, of course.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from you. Like,
the Swarm Lord is bad. That's all I'm saying.
You get yourself across that board and you figure out how to do it.
Oh goodness. Well, we're getting close to the full hour here of our ranting and raving about the new FAQs. Is there anything that I know that I'm running with the smite spam? The recent list I played you with, Chris, you brought some Genestealer Cult. Was that motivated by the
the gates being open for them?
I'll be honest, man. I mean, in older lists, like I think that old One Eye list I ran against you once, where you mind controlled an old One Eye and he killed a Patriarch.
Yeah.
I ran that almost exact same Gene Stealer cult detachment. It's one that I've run before, so I can't say it was entirely motivated by these FAQ changes.
Mm-hmm.
However, knowing that my opponent can't do that kind of Alpha Strike shenanigans, it's certainly more incentive to run that same detachment. Because, I mean, you know, you can do all kinds of tricks. I mean, the Gene Stealer cult characters, the Patriarch is the only one who costs near what a Hive Tyrant costs. Most of them, you know, I think the Icon Ward is like 55 points, and that's like the cheapest one of them all. Like, you know, like the Primus is like 75. They die a little too easily, in my opinion. I mean, I know maybe that's just whinging, but simultaneously, you know, like, it's decent. I think one of the big things is that, you know, you're going to see a lot more pure strain Gene Stealers run, because while they're more expensive than Tyranid Gene Stealers, they are no longer prohibited from Alpha Striking. And that's something that, you know, is valuable.
Yeah. Do you see yourself trying to force more battalions? You seen a brigade? Like, obviously everybody's thinking battalions and brigades now, right?
I was already almost every single list I've run like 2 battalions and the one other detachment that gave 1 command point.
Yeah.
Last game against you, I did the exact same thing. I'm just getting more command points now.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing as well with my 1,000 Sons. Just two battalions, 1 Supreme.
I don't see myself changing too much. I mean, for me, it's just more icing on the cake as far as command points go, because, I mean, prior to this, I was still getting, like, 12 command points, which, I mean, I always had an opportunity to maybe get some back. Not as easily as a lot of other armies, because, let's be honest, like, getting command points back on a 5-up is cheesy as shit.
Guard and Blood Angels both have a lot of ways of doing those nature. Well, combine them together.
Let me just roll a dice whenever my opponent spends a command point, or whenever I spend a command point on a 5-up, I get it back. I'm like, so you're basically getting 33% of your command points for free. I like the Tau version where they get it back on a 6-up. I think that's much more fair. I almost expected, I'll be honest, in these FAQs to see something saying like, oh, well, these 5-up whatever the hells are going to be only effective on a 6-up. But simultaneously, I think because everyone now has more command points in general, they saw less of a need to nerf that.
Yeah.
Hey, you could be like Death Guard and have to roll 2 dice and get an exact 7.
I mean, hey, for me, that is honestly, like, I can't complain about that. Like, for me, I'm like, that's fair.
Of course, it sucks.
What about you, James? How's things shaping up for you with the new meta?
Oh, dude, not a damn thing changed on my Adepticon list if I'm allowed to take Demon Princes from different books.
Right.
Not a damn thing. Like, I only used Tide of Traders once. Like, that's it.
Also, hold up. You got to roll 2 dice and roll a 7. I specifically had to kill a character with Gene Stealers or a Lictor in order to get back command points.
Hey,
that's some dog shit.
If I had to kill a character and spend a command point to get D3 command points, and I had to do it with one of my characters, I'm about it all day.
No, it's not with one of your characters. It's with 2 specific units, one of which is dog crap, and the other which all your opponents know is a high threat unit and just shoot early.
Hey, I don't want to hear it.
I'd rather roll the 7. That's all I'm saying. Maybe that's glass half full. You know, like looking at your lawn being like it's greener.
Filling the glass.
Yeah, that was a funny meme. So most things stay the same. We're all happy about more command points. Makes life easier.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy about the more command points. There's always stratagems I wish I could have used, but I had priority stratagems over those that I always had to hold them precious. And now I feel like I can kind of use the demon bullet if I wanted to, where if it's a bolter and you shoot, it does D3 mortal wounds if it wounds them. Like, yeah, I will take that all day. Yeah. Like, I never got to play that before.
Yeah.
Using Veterans of Long War multiple times in the shooting phase, in the fight phase, like, I can get more free with that. Like, that's awesome. Maybe I want to change a power where I was like, I don't want to use that one command point. yeah, I might use it now.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot better about that. It just sucks because I was building a new list that I thought was going to be fun and fluffy. Because I like to play competitive, but I like to play to my play style. So I am very assault and love of the game. Like, I don't like bullets in the future. I like swords and axes, maybe with chainsaws on them. I don't know.
Teeth and claws.
Yeah, some teeth and claws. Like, I like big monsters fighting each other. Like, I think that's way cooler. And for me, it feels more like chess. Like, I need to get to you to fight you. So, like, I like that, like, element to it. And if I get to you, I normally kill you. So I enjoy, like, that risk-reward factor. And I normally have a more enjoyable game that way. My opponent has a more enjoyable game that way. We're not just sitting there rolling dice and just picking up models. It's from, like, a distance, like guard or Tau. Like, I don't really ever see myself playing that style of gameplay. So I was building a Death Guard list where I had the grenade character, the elite character, where units within 3 inches of them, you get +1 strength to their grenade, and on 6s it flicks a mortal wound. And there's a stratagem where every dude in the unit gets to throw a grenade. And then you can, like, reroll 1s on them because they're plague grenades. Like, there's just really cool, like, combinations there. And the new Termite from Forge World came out, and I was like, that thing's awesome because the Hellforged version of it for Chaos, when it blows up 2d6 distance and does d6 mortal wounds on a unit. And if it's a Psyker, it does 2d3 mortal wounds on a unit. And with Death Guard, you can, when your vehicle dies, you can use a stratagem and it auto blows it up.
Right. Yeah, good.
So I can put it in your face. It delivers a heavy grenade attack, and then they go into combat, and they're super survivable. They're almost like berserkers at that point. They can just only attack once, not twice, to give them the bubonic axes. And I was rolling 3 units of 7, so keeping it fluffy with those characters in there. And then one of them doubled up on 2 extra characters, where they got the Tally Man, gives re-roll 6-inch bubble of all hits. Hopefully give it to all units, because I want to bring all 3 things up at the same time. And then there's the Blight's Putrefier, which makes you always fight first. Your opponent fights last if they're within, like, this 6-inch, I think it's 7 inches. So, because he stinks so bad, you don't get to swing first. So, like, I got this awesome, like, mortal wound dealer. I got transportation to combat. I have a heavy hit to combat. And then when I blow up, I get to do even more mortal wounds. Like, it just seems so much fun to me. And then what's starred on the board is 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, Typhus, a Demon Prince, Necrosis, and 14 Poxwalkers. Just keeping it all fluffy. The rule of 7, everything. So I was super excited about this list. I felt like it could be competitive, not over the top. Like, I consider myself a gatekeeper player anyways. Like, I normally get to the top table, but I lose. So I always kind of place between, like, 3rd to 5th most times. I got 2nd the last tournament. So I don't see myself being that, like, overly competitive player. I win at all costs. And I'm a good painter, so I wanted to paint something awesome and be proud of it. But with these new Deep Strike rules, even though I only have 3 transports filled with dudes off the table, it's like 71 power level. And what's on the table is like 43 power level, even though there's more units on the table.
Gotcha.
So what I have to do now is take one of my termites and start it on the field. And I don't want to do that, even though they're strength 8 with 10 wounds. Because when they come up, the turn they come up, anything within 12 inches receives a mortal wound. So having 3 of them, bringing them all up at once, everything within 12 inches would get 3 mortal wounds. And hopefully can kill some light characters.
Sounds like you're playing Molochs.
Yeah, it sounded cool, right? But now I have to wait to turn 2 to bring those things in, and they're not drop pods, so you have to wait a turn to get out of them because they show up at the end of the movement phase. So the dudes inside don't get out until turn 3.
Tricky.
And I gotta start one on the fucking board. So yeah, a little disappointed when I'm not trying to spam anything. Don't have more than 3. Not even really trying to alpha strike someone. I just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
With new units. I mean, I literally just bought 3 brand new termites.
You just got beat down with that one then, huh?
No, I'm still gonna play that damn list. I'm just starting one on the board.
Yeah,
dude,
it still blows up. It still creates mortal wounds. I only had enough points to give that one double commie bolters, or the other two have double heavy flamers. So I'm totally cool still. I mean,
I'm not gonna lie. There's one player in our 40k Facebook thread that's about 16 players strong, who is very much flavor of the week. I'm gonna buy 7 hive tyrants and whatever. That I was just like so happy to see crapped on with this 3 change.
dude, not only that, but he just bought 3 vaults.
In this army, I'm just like, you know what, man? Like, honestly, you're being kind of a cheese dick, and I get it. Like, you know, like,
You're being called out.
40k, heart. Like, yeah, fuck you. Like,
Pew pew, shots fired. Pew pew.
we'll see if our buddy watches to the end of the video here. You know who you are.
You know.
Well, with that, let's wrap it up here. So thanks if you're still watching or you're watching on the back end, everybody. This is episode 2 of our live talk show we do every Thursday, attempting to do at 9 o'clock. We had some technical difficulties getting off the ground floor on this one, but we recovered and got our conversation about the FAQ. Hopefully you picked up some tidbits that you might have not checked out before. If you got any questions, give us some comments. We really appreciate the subscribes and engagement. And to go along with that appreciation, we have a giveaway going on every month. If you see on the screen there is the Tau Vespids original. I think they're out of print now. They're the original version that was released. They are rare, and you can get one set new in box thanks to Dragonfire Games. And all you got to do is just subscribe to our YouTube, like our Facebook, follow us on Twitch, check us out on Instagram. We're on all the things, and we appreciate you.
We're even on Snapchat.
On them as well. Yeah, we're even on Snapchat now. Ice Wolf and Will, thank you for trying to tune in and getting part of the conversation. It definitely is our intention to be able to have this be a talk show that we can engage with you out there, the community at large. Tonight it just didn't work out trying to get the multi-camera scenario going in, and lo and behold, all it was restarting the computer or hitting some buttons in a certain way. It's always a button push away. And tonight the button was a struggle to find. Next week we should be good to go. We'll figure out a way to get this thing smooth and awesome every time consistently. We appreciate you. Hope you keep taking fun seriously. We'll catch you next time.
Have a good night.
Fucking dudes.